Let's move now to the shocking story of forced adoptions. According to a report published by Parliament in 2022, more than 180,000 women were coerced into giving up their babies in the UK in the 1950s, 60s and 70s. Most were young and unmarried at a time when, for many, there was still shame and stigma attached to becoming pregnant while single or out of wedlock. Thousands were sent far away to so-called mother and baby homes where their pregnancies were concealed, and they were pressured into signing adoption papers. Marcella Whittingdale's been speaking to Veronica. She's one of the affected mothers, calling for the government to make an official apology over its role in the scandal.
A trained nurse, Veronica Smith from Seaford, has spent her life looking after other people. But when she fell pregnant, unmarried at 24 in the early 60s, she was made to feel ashamed and unfit to be a mother.
How old was your daughter when she was taken away? How long did you get with her?
8 days. Yeah.
Veronica's own mother secretly sent her to a mother and baby hostel, and later she gave birth at a hospital in Surrey run by nuns. Her mother organised for the child to be taken away by a Catholic adoption agency, and that was the last Veronica saw of her newborn. She says it was so traumatising she has few memories of her time there and doesn't even remember saying goodbye.
From the hostel I was in, we used to go in a sort of crocodile to church, and you could hear the congregation whispering, "Oh, those girls from up the road," and just made to feel dirty. I cannot remember much about that time. I vaguely remember being in that hospital. I don't remember feeding her or anything. It's just a blank.
More than 180,000 women like Veronica in the 50s, 60s and 70s were shamed and coerced into giving up their babies. Birth mothers and adoptees have long campaigned for a government apology, while in 2022 a committee of MPs made the same recommendation.
The UK government says they recognise the suffering that so many women and their children had to endure. And they say they're sorry on behalf of society for what happened. But they have so far stopped short of an official apology.
But while society undoubtedly played a role in shaming unmarried mothers into giving up their babies, recent research has discovered government policy also played its part.
They say that an apology isn't something they're going to pursue because they don't feel that the state had any central involvement. The records of the government itself, a very cursory examination of those shows that the whole process of historical forced adoption was financed, underwritten, legislated and enacted on behalf of central government.
It's lovely that you've got so many photos.
Yeah.
Now, happily married, she is in contact with the daughter she was forced to give up. She says an apology from the state would at least acknowledge not only how she was mistreated, but also just how much she was made to miss out on.
That was Marcella Whittingdale with that report. And Karen, I know this is a particularly personal story for you because you were actually sent to one of these mother and baby homes when you were 15.
Yes, I was.
How did you end up there?
1978. Oh, well, I got pregnant because we only did locusts as sex education in my all-girls Catholic girls' school. And I was pregnant and I went to church as usual, and the priest took us to the back of the church and opened a huge directory and said, "We'll send her there," and that was it. My fate was sealed. I want to say thank you to Veronica, and just to say my heart goes out to her and all of those other women. And I'm in contact now with a lot of them to start to tell these stories. There was my story, which is one thing, and I was very fortunate.
So tell us about that, because they tried to pressure you into giving up your son when you were there at the mother and baby home, but you didn't.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I was with somebody that was both a priest and a social worker. So talk about conflict of responsibilities there. And I would meet with him on an almost daily basis and be passed the papers to sign, and was told, your baby will be better off, your baby will have a better life, will be better, properly looked after. And it's very difficult at 15 and completely as green as grass, to work, and there's no access to information. You don't feel like you've got any rights. You don't know if you've got any rights. But, I felt at 15 very bonded with my baby whilst I was pregnant. And it's only my enduring stubborn streak that you know, meant that I kept my son, and I'm very grateful that I did. But the stories that I'm now hearing of what happened to those women, and also those children that were, you know, surrendered, forced to be given away from their mothers, those stories are heart-wrenching and horrific.
Yeah.
And that apology is much needed. And whilst I'm a politician, I'll spend my time now trying to make sure that that apology is forthcoming, because it is so needed.
And you're writing a book.
Yes.
In collaboration with these many of the other women.
Yes. So I'm basically meeting with people, and they're explaining to me their circumstances, and I'm now sort of putting that together. I've met with about 20 women and some men, both birth mothers and also adult adoptees. And at the root of all of that, you know, is the burden of shame, which most of these women carry. Their children also carry it because they feel that they were given away unnecessarily. The situations are always very complex, and I don't think, I mean, it's like a lot of the sort of social justice scandals that we've had in this country, not least of all with Horizon and the sub-postmasters and mistresses. This is another hidden scandal, and this happened in the 50s, 60s and 70s. It was at least 185,000
So why do you think the government,
women.
why is the government reluctant to apologise, seemingly?
I don't understand that, because I think, you know, the Scottish government gave that apology and the Welsh governments gave the apology, and for some reason it's been kicked into the long grass.
What would the apology mean to you?
I'm not in that particular cohort. I've not been considered technically in that apology, because I'm post 76, my circumstances. But I know for those women, they are taking the sense of shame to their grave, because what they say, and what I understand firsthand, is they did sign the papers, even though they were coerced, even though they were being forced. Ultimately, they signed that document to say, you can take my baby. And I think this apology would set the record straight. It would mean it was actually formally understood that there was pressure, that the pressure of shame meant they had no other way forward. And also, I think there's a lot that we can learn from these circumstances, pertinent to the way we treat children now, and pertinent to adoption processes now. And we shouldn't miss an opportunity to move forward with that increased understanding.
Okay. Henry, what do you make of this? Do you think the government should apologise?
Well, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And I think one of the things that we can look to are other countries where apologies have been issued. Australia, for example, I know in Ireland, Canada, Denmark, many other countries where sadly the sort of legislation that the state at the time, half a century ago, enacted, and also societal attitudes, as we've discussed, caused this coercion. I think an apology is probably right to be made for those historical wrongs, because this isn't just something that's in the history books. This is something that many people are still suffering today the effects of, whether that be those parents who were forced coerced to give up their babies for adoption, and indeed many of those adoptees who, some of whom are rediscovering their birth parents, but will have had lifelong effects and will do for many years to come.
It's interesting hearing Karen bring up the post office scandal. Do you think sometimes politicians are kind of too slow to make amends over things like this?
I think it's really important in a democracy that when mistakes are made, that those are owned up to and learnt from. So hopefully we can avoid making similar mistakes in the future. So I do think, even though the events of, in this case, coerced adoptions took place before probably anyone is in Parliament today, at the time, I do think it's important that the state, when historical mistakes have been made, does recognise that, and there's plenty of precedent for it.
All right, thank you, Henry, and thank you very much, Karen, for sharing your story.